Fresh snow blanketed the small town of Maple Hollow, Minnesota, softening the world into a quiet white stillness. It was the kind of place where neighbors waved from their porches, doors were rarely locked, and children played freely without. Fair until the day everything changed. 8 years ago, a little boy named Joshua Coulter vanished without a trace, shattering the town's sense of safety. On that fateful winter morning, 5-year-old Joshua, with his fiery red hair and laughter that could warm even the coldest day, begged to play outside in the new snow. His parents, Ethan and Claire, had let him, as they had so many times before. Their home bordered a patch of familiar woods where neighborhood kids often explored. Ethan promised he'd check in after 20 minutes. But when he stepped outside, Joshua was gone. The search that followed consumed the town neighbors' police, even divers scouring the frozen lake half a mile away. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months, until the official search was called off. But for Ethan and Claire, time never moved forward. Their lives remained suspended in that moment, forever waiting. On this morning, 8 winters later, Ethan sat at the dining table, surrounded by a fortress of police reports and witness statements. They were scraps of hope, most dead ends. Some new tips from Detective Palmer that had fizzled out before they began, but Ethan read them again and again, as if the answer might reveal itself on the 100th pass. Beyond the window, snow drifted lazily across the yard, and the sound of Claire moving through the house, straightening, dusting, folding was a steady rhythm in the background. Housework had become her shield, a way to keep her hands and mind busy when her heart ached too much. "Still going through those?" she asked, passing by with a laundry basket. Ethan nodded without looking up. Palmer said a couple of tips came in last month, nothing solid. He didn't have to finish the thought. Claire knew. They had been living on these fragments for years. The doorbell rang, pulling Ethan out of the haze. At the door stood Harold Stevens, their neighbor from across the street, tall, broad-shouldered, and prematurely gray. Harold had once been a familiar figure in town, until tragedy hollowed him out. A decade ago, he'd lost his wife and son in a home robbery, and ever since, he'd kept to himself. "Morning, Ethan," Harold said, shifting awkwardly on the porch. "Sorry to bother you, but last night's storm knocked part of your fence onto my property." Ethan apologized instantly, explaining his welder was broken. Harold waved it off. "I already fixed it. Was out back working on something anyway." Ethan thanked him, curious about the noise he'd heard earlier, but Harold brushed past the subject. With a polite nod, he turned to leave. As Ethan closed the door, Claire stepped in from the backyard, cheeks pink from the cold. "Was that Harold?" she asked, unwinding her scarf. "Fence blew down again," Ethan replied. "He fixed it himself." "Do you want me to keep going?" Into the next moment, with Ethan crossing the street to Harold's property, so the emotional wave starts, building toward the strange undercurrent. Claire hung her scarf on the hook by the door, her cheek still flushed from the cold. A faint smile tugged at her lips. "It's been a while since we've had Harold over. We should invite him to dinner, thank him for fixing the fence." Ethan hesitated, glancing at the piles of reports on the table. "I don't know, Claire. Palmer sent over new leads on Joshua. I'd rather focus on those tonight, not make small talk." Her expression softened sadness threaded with gentle reproach. "Ethan, we've been so isolated these past 8 years. When was the last time we invited anyone over?" She waited, but he had no answer. She pressed on. "Harold's been through his own loss. You remember his wife and son, the robbery. He's been alone for a decade. Maybe it would help us both to spend time with someone who understands." Ethan's gaze drifted back to the papers. For years, the search had consumed them, shrinking their lives to a loop of police updates, unanswered questions, and what-ifs. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time for anything normal or right, he said finally. The smile that spread across Claire's face was worth the concession. It was the first time in weeks he'd seen it. Bundling into his jacket, Ethan stepped outside. The air was sharp and still, the only sound the crunch of his boots over hard-packed snow. Harold's house sat across the street, a modest 2-story, that had once been neatly kept, but now bore the wear of neglect. The paint was flaking, gutters sagged under the weight of ice, and the front path was buried in unshoveled snow. Ethan knocked, waited, knocked again. Nothing. He was about to turn away when a muffled thudding carried from behind the house. Steady, deliberate rhythm. Following the sound, he rounded the corner into deeper snow. Harold, he called. It's Ethan. At the far end of the yard, crouched inside an old wooden dog kennel, Harold froze mid-motion. After a beat, he backed out, straightening quickly as if to block Ethan's view. His breath came fast, like he'd been caught off guard. "Ethan," Harold said, forcing a smile. "Sorry, I didn't hear you knocking." Ethan nodded, toward the kennel. "I'm surprised you've still got that old thing. Didn't Rex pass away years ago? Need help tearing it down?" Harold's gaze flicked to the structure. It's a reminder. He was a good dog." His tone was clipped, and the pause before speaking hung heavy in the cold air. Only then did Ethan notice a half-built wooden frame nearby a much larger kennel. "Thinking about getting another?" "Maybe," Harold said. "Started on it a few weeks back. Wanted to finish it today. In this weather." Ethan smiled faintly. "That's dedication. I used to breed dogs myself back before Joshua." "What kind are you thinking?" "Haven't decided. Maybe a puppy. Mid-size as well," Ethan said. "Claire and I were hoping you'd join us for dinner tonight. I could even help you finish this first. Then we could go see a local breeder." "I know." Harold hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Dinner sounds nice." As they talked, Ethan caught Harold's eyes drifting back toward the old kennel, as if making sure it stayed between them and the conversation. Something about it tugged at Ethan's mind, something he couldn't quite name. Claire hung her scarf on the hook by the door, her lips curling into a faint smile. "It's been a while since we've gotten together with Harold. Maybe we should invite him to dinner, thank him for fixing the gate." Ethan hesitated mid-step. "I don't know, Claire. We've got those police reports to sort through, the new leads about Joshua. I'd rather focus on that tonight, not make small talk." Claire's expression softened, a blend of sadness and quiet reproach. "Ethan, we've become so isolated these past 8 years. When was the last time we had someone over?" "Years ago." Ethan didn't answer right away. She was right. The search for Joshua had swallowed their lives whole, pushing friends and neighbors to the edges until there was nothing left but the two of them and a stack of unanswered questions. "Harold, too," Claire continued. "Look at him ever since. His wife and son were killed in that robbery 10 years ago. He's been living like a ghost in that house. Can you imagine being alone for so long?" She stepped closer, resting her hand gently on his shoulder. "Maybe it would be good to share a meal together. We've all known loss. Maybe we can remind each other what it's like to belong somewhere." Again, Ethan's gaze drifted to the pile of documents on the table. She had a point. Maybe they both needed this. "All right," he said finally. "I'll invite him tonight." Claire's smile lit up the room, something he hadn't seen in far too long. Pulling on his jacket, Ethan stepped into the crisp winter air. Snow crunched under his boots as he crossed the street toward Harold's modest 2-story home. The paint was peeling, the yard untouched, drifts of snow piling where no shovel had passed in years. He knocked firmly. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Just as he turned to leave, a muffled thudding caught his ear like someone hammering. He followed the sound around to the backyard, sinking deeper into the snow with every step. "Harold, it's Ethan," he called. The noise led him to a weathered doghouse at the far end of the yard. Harold was crouched inside, adjusting something. At the sound of Ethan's voice, he froze, then backed out slowly, his breath visible in the cold. "Ethan, sorry, didn't hear you knocking." Ethan glanced at the small structure, surprised. "That old doghouse is still standing. I thought you might have torn it down years ago." Harold's reply came a little too quick. "It's a reminder of Rex. He was a good dog." Ethan nodded, understanding the attachment to old memories. Harold gestured toward a partially built larger structure nearby. "I've been thinking about getting another dog. Been working on that kennel for weeks." Ethan raised a brow. "In this weather? That's dedication." "What kind of dog?" Harold shrugged. "Haven't decided yet." Ethan smiled. "Tell you what, why don't I help you finish it today? And afterward, we'll check out a breeder I know. Claire and I wanted to invite you to dinner anyway." After a pause, Harold agreed. They set a tentative plan, though Ethan couldn't ignore the way Harold's eyes kept flicking toward the old doghouse. "Great, I'll leave you to it," Ethan said, stepping back. "Come over when you're ready to head out, and we'll eat around 6. Harold nodded, already turning away. Crossing back home, Ethan felt a nagging unease. Nothing Harold had said was suspicious. If anything, he'd been polite, even friendly. Still, the sudden talk of a new pet after years of isolation felt odd. He shook the thought off. People healed in their own ways. Inside, Claire was straightening, throw pillows and stacking magazines. He said yes, Ethan announced, hanging his coat. Her face lit up. That's wonderful. What time? 6:00 and he's building a new doghouse, planning to get a dog. Claire's eyebrows rose. After all these years, I told you he must be lonely. A dog could be the best thing for him. Ethan sat at the table, glancing at the police files. It's just unexpected. He's kept the old one all this time, almost like a memorial. Claire disappeared into the kitchen. People move on in different ways. Speaking of which, we need groceries for dinner. I want to make something special. Ethan sighed, wishing for more time with the reports. Could you handle it? I'd like to finish reviewing these leads. Claire's voice floated back, hopeful. I still need to clean, and you know I don't like driving in this weather. Her expression when she returned was gentle but expectant. Ethan felt that familiar pang. She asked so little these days. All right, he said. I'll shop, drop things off, then see if Harold's ready for the breeder. Her smile was worth the concession. She quickly scribbled a list, adding items as she checked the pantry. Ethan shoveled the driveway, started the car, and let it idle, his breath puffing into the cold. Just as he was about to leave, Harold crossed the street. Hey, all done already? Ethan asked, rolling down the window. Actually, Harold said, I remembered I have plans with friends this morning. We'll have to skip the breeder, but I'll still be over for dinner. Ethan blinked. Friends? That was new. No problem. See you at 6. Harold turned back toward his house, and that uneasy feeling stirred again. Still, Ethan drove off, the grocery list in his head, weaving between thoughts of Joshua and the strange new heir to Harold's story. Ethan's boots crunched against the icy pavement as he hefted the last grocery bag into the trunk, the sky above turning the color of old pewter. Snow was coming, and soon he slid into the driver's seat, exhaling a white plume into the chilled air, when a flicker of movement on the main road caught his eye. Harold's blue sedan. Ethan blinked, leaning forward. Clear windows, driver's seat occupied by none other than Harold himself, and notably no passengers. The direction of travel didn't match home. Curiosity tugged at him like an insistent hand. Without meaning to, Ethan's route aligned with Harold's, trailing him at a polite distance. Minutes later, Harold's turn signal blinked, guiding his car into the lot of Northwood's kennels, the very breeder Ethan had suggested earlier. Confusion settled like the snowflakes beginning to drift from the sky. Harold had cancelled their trip, claiming plans with friends, yet here he was, alone. Ethan drove past slowly, his gaze catching the tidy sign and neat rows of kennels beyond the fence. A dozen explanations flitted through his mind. Maybe Harold preferred solitude when making big decisions. Maybe he didn't want to feel indebted. Or maybe, Ethan thought, the lie was easier than admitting he wanted control over the choice. Still, it was an odd fib for a man known more for reclusion than invention. By the time Ethan pulled into his own driveway, the snow had begun its slow, steady curtain fall. Inside, Claire met him in the kitchen, hands already busy preparing for the evening. You're back sooner than I thought, she said, accepting a grocery bag. Ethan set the rest on the counter. Not much traffic. But I saw Harold at the kennel on the way back. Claire paused, a knife hovering over the cutting board. I thought he cancelled. He did, Ethan said. Said he had plans with friends. Alone at the kennel doesn't look much like that. Claire's brow softened. Maybe he wanted to look by himself first. Ethan nodded, but the thought didn't stick. His eyes wandered to the window just as Harold's sedan pulled into the driveway across the street. From the trunk, Harold wrestled out a metal dog crate. Inside, the muted brown and black coat of a German shepherd shifted restlessly. That was quick. Ethan murmured. Claire joined him, tilting her head. Must have been love at first sight. Maybe, Ethan said, but something about the speed gnawed at him. Paperwork, checks, questions. It usually took time. Harold trudged through the snow, the crate tilting awkwardly with each step as the dog inside shifted its weight. Instinct propelled Ethan toward the door. He crossed the street, boots sinking into fresh powder. Need a hand with that? Harold looked up sharply, eyes flashing with something almost defensive. No, I'm fine, he replied, the words clipped and quick. See you this evening. Ethan froze mid-step, the brow catching him off guard. If you're sure. A brief nod was all Harold gave before turning back to his struggle. Shoulders hunched against both snow and scrutiny. Ethan returned home with a heaviness in his chest he couldn't quite name. Claire, catching his expression, only said, "Some people don't like accepting help. Makes them feel exposed." "Maybe," Ethan allowed, but the unease lingered like a shadow just out of reach. Outside, snow muffled the neighborhood, and inside, the house grew still as Ethan settled at the dining table again. Police documents lay in untidy stacks, each page another reminder of Joshua, other reminder of the years marked by absence rather than progress. The hours crawled by, the only movement the slow gathering of white over Maple Hollow, burying everything in its quiet, relentless way. Ethan skimmed another page, the familiar weight settling in his chest. One report spoke of a possible sighting 200 miles south, but the description had been hazy, the follow-up empty. Another detailed a boy in Montana's similar build, same eye color enrolled under a different name. But when investigators arrived, the resemblance dissolved into coincidence. 8 years of chasing shadows, of running down hope, only to watch it crumble, had worn him down. Still, he couldn't stop. Somewhere, Joshua might still be waiting. By late afternoon, the warm scent of pot roast filled the house, mingling with the yeasty comfort of fresh rolls and the sweet promise of apple pie. Claire's care in preparing the meal was unmistakably, wasn't just dinner, it was an event. "Think he'll actually come?" Ethan asked, sliding forks beside folded napkins. "Why wouldn't he?" Claire replied, arranging the table with practiced ease. Ethan hesitated. "Just the last-minute changes. How he acted when I offered to help with the dog." Claire's expression softened. "He's probably just nervous. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt." At exactly 6, the doorbell chimed. Harold stood, framed in the doorway, a bottle of wine in hand, snowflakes melting on his shoulders. "Hope Red's all right," he said, passing the bottle to Ethan. "Perfect. Thank you," Ethan replied, ushering him inside. Claire took his coat with a warm smile, and soon they were settled at the table. Conversation easing over wine and steaming plates. The topics stayed safe weather, town events, idle observations, until Ethan decided to nudge the conversation. "So, I see you got a German Shepherd today. How's it settling in?" Harold's fork paused mid-air, a flicker of stiffness in his posture. "It's fine. Still adjusting." "That was a quick trip to the breeder," Ethan said lightly. "I saw you on my way back from the store right after you'd said you were meeting friends." A shadow crossed Harold's expression. "My friend cancelled last minute. I was excited, so I just went." Ethan swirled his wine. "I was surprised they processed it so fast. Paperwork usually takes a while. I'd ordered it a few days." "Ego," Harold replied, voice steady but eyes sliding away. The explanation fit, yet Ethan's memory nagged Harold hadn't seemed certain about breed or age when they'd last spoken. Now, the slight tremor in Harold's hand, the way he skirted direct eye contact, hinted at something more than shyness. Sensing the shift, Claire interjected gently. "Ethan mentioned you lost your wife and son 10 years ago. I'm so sorry. We know what that's like." Harold's face softened, but before Claire could finish the thought, his attention snapped to the window. Heavy snow blurred the glass. "I'm very sorry," he interrupted abruptly. "I should check on my dog. It might be stressed with the weather." He rose quickly, as though eager to be anywhere but at their table. Harold stood abruptly, the chair legs scraping the floor. "I'm afraid I left it outside in the kennel. Forgot to bring it in before I came over." Ethan glanced at the window. Snow was sweeping sideways now, the wind pressing against the glass. "You're right, it's getting bad. Want me to help bring it in?" No, Harold said quickly, too quickly. There was a sharp edge in his voice, almost panic. "It's a German Shepherd. Might get alarmed by strangers. Even I'm still getting used to it. I'll handle it and come back after." Claire rose with a nod. "Of course. Just make sure your dog's safe. We're right across the street, don't rush." Harold gave a quick, grateful nod and left without even taking his coat. The front door shut, leaving the warm hum of the dining room suddenly thinner. "That was strange," Ethan said. "He's concerned for his pet." "Understandable," Claire replied, topping off their glasses. "Maybe," Ethan said, though his voice lacked conviction. They ate in a slow, distracted rhythm. Claire sighed softly. "Ethan, imagine if I were gone too. You'd still have to work, manage the house, do everything yourself. Harold's been doing that for 10 years. The fact that he cares this much for his dog, maybe he deserves some happiness." But Harold didn't come back. The pie sat cooling on the counter, untouched. The house fell into quiet, except for the faint chime of silverware against plates. "It's fine if he doesn't make it back," Claire said after a while. "Maybe the dog's having trouble settling in." She rose to start clearing the table, then stopped, glancing toward the door. Harold's coat still hung on the rack. Oh, he forgot his coat. "It's freezing out." Ethan pushed his chair back. "I'll take it to him." He shrugged on his own coat, grabbed Harold's, and stepped out into the night. Snow crunched under his boots, the cold air stinging his cheeks. Streetlights caught the swirling flakes, turning them into drifting sparks against the dark. Across the street, Harold's house was dark except for a faint glow in the back kitchen light. Maybe Ethan knocked. Harold's coat folded over his arm. He waited a full minute, then knocked again. Harder. No answer. Ethan checked his watch. More than 30 minutes since Harold had left, too long for simply bringing a dog inside. Then he heard it, barking, sharp and insistent, coming from behind the house. He followed the sound around the side yard. "Harold, it's Ethan. I brought your coat." The backyard came into view under the spill of kitchen light. The German shepherd was still outside, pacing in and out of its small kennel, the chain at its collar clinking in the cold. Not only was the dog still out here, but the larger doghouse Harold had said he would finish that morning sat incomplete, boards leaning against its frame. None of it made sense. Harold had left dinner to bring the dog in, yet here it was, shivering. In the worsening storm, Ethan called out again. No reply. Through the kitchen window, the light was steady, but the room inside was still. Harold's car was in the driveway, and with weather like this, going anywhere on foot seemed absurd, especially without his coat. Ethan dialed Harold's number, straight to voicemail. Unease tightened in his chest. The dog's barking shifted less at Ethan now, more toward the small kennel, whining between bursts, its gaze locked on the floor. Ethan stepped closer, careful, his voice low and calming the way he used to with nervous breeding dogs. From the side, he caught a new detail, a wooden panel built into the kennel floor, a small padlock resting on top of it, its shackle open. A metallic glint like a handle gleamed faintly in the light. Snowflakes clung to Ethan's coat as he faced Harold in the dim backyard light, the German shepherd pacing restlessly at the end of its chain. The cold bit at his skin, but the tension between them felt sharper still. Harold's eyes flicked to the open trapdoor, then back to Ethan, his voice low and tight. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, each word clipped. Ethan stepped closer, refusing to let the moment slip away. "I know you've been avoiding straight answers since this morning," he said evenly. "And now I find a hidden bunker under your doghouse. Your dog still outside in freezing weather, and you missing for almost an hour without your coat. That's not nothing, Harold." The older man's hand gripped the coat tighter, his knuckles pale against the fabric. A gust of wind rattled the kennel roof, and the dog let out a sharp bark, as if echoing Ethan's unease. Harold exhaled slowly, but his gaze hardened. "Some doors," he said, almost like a warning, "are better left closed." His words hung in the frigid air, heavy with implication. Ethan felt that same pull he'd battled for years, the gnawing instinct to push past walls, to dig until the truth was laid bare. And right now, that truth was standing in front of him, wearing a guarded expression, and hiding something in a place no one was supposed to look. The night was far from over. The wind whipped through the yard, carrying with it the sharp bite of winter and the low, uneasy whine of the German shepherd. Ethan's question, "What's really going on?" still hung in the frigid air when Harold suddenly lunged. The move was so fast, so raw with desperation, that Ethan barely had time to brace before Harold's hands were in his jacket, shoving him back with surprising force. They crashed into the snow, boots scrambling for traction, breath clouding. In the cold, Harold's face twisted between rage and something Ethan recognized all too well, fear. "You should have stayed out of this," Harold growled, his voice ragged, and drove a punch deep into Ethan's ribs. Pain bloomed sharp, stealing his breath, but Ethan had weathered worse in years of heavy labor. He blocked the next swing and shoved Harold off him. "What are you hiding?" Ethan demanded, circling warily, adrenaline cutting through the cold. Harold didn't answer. He charged again, knee slamming into Ethan's stomach. The impact folded Ethan in half, and before he could recover, Harold was forcing him toward the open trapdoor. "Get in," Harold ordered, his tone unsettlingly calm after such violence. Ethan straightened, grimacing. "You can't make me." Slow, chilling smile spread across Harold's face. His hand went to his back, and when it came forward, it carried a handgun. "Either you climb down, or I drop your body down there. Your choice." The sight of the gun sent a spike of fear through Ethan's chest, but his voice stayed steady. "The police are on their way. Claire called them when I couldn't find you. If you fire, the whole neighborhood will hear it." For a moment, frustration flickered in Harold's eyes, but instead of pulling the trigger, he swung the gun like a club. The metal cracked against Ethan's temple, and stars exploded in his vision as warm blood began to trickle down his face. Harold shoved again, trying to force him into the narrow opening, but pain sharpened Ethan's focus. In a surge of defiance, he caught Harold's wrist and twisted hard. The gun clattered to the wooden floor of the doghouse before vanishing into the darkness below. Harold roared and charged, but this time Ethan stepped aside, letting Harold's own momentum drive him into the doghouse wall. Then came the sound, sharp and unmistakably, of police sirens cutting through the winter night. Red and blue light danced across the snow as two cruisers skidded to a stop out front. Officers moved in, weapons ready. "Hands where we can see them," one barked. Ethan and Harold both raised their hands, though Harold's went up with obvious reluctance. An officer pulled Ethan aside, checking the cut above his eye, while another restrained Harold. "What happened here?" the officer demanded. Claire's voice rang out before Ethan could answer. She came running across the yard, her breath puffing in the cold. "Ethan, are you okay?" "I'm fine," he said, though the sting in his ribs and the warmth of blood on his skin told another story. He explained quickly the strange behavior, the hidden bunker, the attack, the gun. "It fell into the bunker," he finished. The officer turned to Harold. "Is that true? Did you threaten him with a firearm?" Harold's silence was telling. "We're going to have to take you in," the officer said, cuffing his wrists. While reciting his rights, another patrol car rolled up, followed by an ambulance. Paramedics moved in to check Ethan's injuries, while the rest of the officers turned their attention to the gaping trapdoor and whatever secret still waited. In the cold darkness below, an officer stepped up to the open trapdoor, the beam of his flashlight cutting into the darkness. "Looks like some kind of underground room," he called out. Metal stairs leading down. Before anyone could respond, a sound echoed up from the depths, metal on metal, the steady clink of footsteps climbing. The officers froze, weapons snapping into a ready position. The paramedic instinctively pulled Ethan back. Claire's hand gripped his arm, her breath quickening. The footsteps grew louder. Then, slowly, a figure emerged from the shadows. A boy, maybe 13, with shaggy reddish hair that hadn't seen scissors in months. He was pale, thin, and trembling under the harsh glare of the flashlights. In his shaking hands, he clutched Harold's gun. The officers stiffened, voices firm but cautious. "Put the weapon down," one commanded. The boy's frightened eyes darted between them, the gun wavering dangerously. "Dad," he cried, locking on to Harold. "I won't let the enemy take you. I'll protect you and our home. I want to be a soldier, just like you." His voice cracked with fear. The officers exchanged uncertain glances, adjusting their stances but holding fire. This was no hardened criminal, just a terrified child with a deadly weapon. "Son, put the gun down," one officer said gently. "It's not safe for you to hold that. I know how to use it." The boy snapped, though his voice trembled. "Dad taught me. The country's at war. You're the enemy. You want to take Dad and our home." Ethan's breath caught. The boy's features, his eyes, the angle of his jaw struck him like a blow. The name came out in a whisper. "Joshua." The boy's gaze flicked to him, momentarily uncertain. Ethan took a slow step forward, ignoring the medic's restraining hand. "Joshua, what are you talking about? There's no warrant. Harold isn't your father." His voice faltered, thick with hope. "Your mother and I are your parents." The boy's hands trembled harder. "You're lying. Dad said my mum died in a war that soldiers shot her." Claire's voice broke as she stepped forward, tears streaming. She pulled out her phone, her lock screen unchanged for 8 years, a 5-year-old Joshua grinning at the camera. "You were kidnapped," she said, her voice shaking. "We've been searching for you every day since. We love you so much." Joshua's eyes locked on the photo, his grip on the gun faltering. He glanced toward Harold, but Harold wouldn't meet his gaze. That silence said everything. An officer used the moment to ease forward, hands slow and deliberate. He took the gun from Joshua, without resistance, unloading it quickly. The boy didn't move, still staring at the phone. recognition and confusion fighting in his expression. "There's no war, sweetheart," Claire said softly. "Harold lied. Your real family has been waiting for you all this time." She reached out and touched his hand. He flinched but didn't pull away. The paramedics wrapped Joshua in a blanket and guided him toward the waiting ambulance. Claire stayed at his side, her hand never leaving his pass. Ethan watched, his chest aching with disbelief, relief, and something far deeper. An officer approached him quietly. "Sir, we'll need to ask you and your wife some questions, but first, let's get you patched up." Ethan stood there, numb, his gaze locked on the ambulance where his long-lost son sat under the care of paramedics. 8 years of searching, of clinging to a hope that had grown threadbare, only to discover Joshua had been just across the street the whole time. The next few hours blurred together. Paramedics cleaned the cut above Ethan's eye, wrapped his ribs, and assured him nothing was broken. His body would heal quickly. His heart and mind were another matter. Inside the ambulance, Joshua was cocooned in blankets, answering gentle questions from medics and police. His confusion was plain, his entire world dismantled in minutes. When Ethan stepped closer, the boy looked at him warily, his eyes flicking to the officers standing nearby. "How are you feeling?" Ethan asked, careful to keep his voice soft, not pressing too hard. Joshua shrugged. "I don't know. Everything's different than what Dad," he corrected himself. "I mean, Harold told me." Detective Martinez, a calm-voiced woman with kind eyes, leaned forward with her notepad. "Joshua, I know this is confusing, but can you tell me what it was like living with Harold? Did he ever hurt you?" Joshua shook his head. "No, he just trained me a lot, physical training, and lately, with the gun. He said I had to be ready to protect myself when he wasn't there anymore. Said the war would last a long time. Told me to hide deep in the bunker if things got worse." "Do you know what year it is?" Martinez asked gently. Joshua hesitated. "Harold said it doesn't matter down there. Time works different during wartime. It's 2007. Martinez's tone stayed calm, but her words carried weight. "It's 2015. You've been missing for 8 years. Do you remember anything about before the bunker?" Joshua frowned, struggling. "I don't know. I've been there as long as I can remember. Harold said it was too dangerous outside because of the war." He glanced toward the snow-covered neighborhood beyond the ambulance doors. "But there is no war, is there?" "No," Ethan said quietly. "There never was." From the back of a patrol car, Harold watched them, his expression unreadable. An officer approached the ambulance. "We found something in the bunker. Fully stocked food, water, medical gear, generator, air filtration, educational materials, and several suppressed firearms, just like the boy said." Martinez nodded grimly. "Sounds like he was ready to stay down there for years." She turned to Joshua again. "Did Harold ever let you leave?" Joshua shook his head. "Never. He went out for supplies, said he was helping other people hide from the war. Said when I was older, I could help him." Ethan's stomach turned. Harold hadn't just hidden their son, he'd imprisoned him, building an entire fantasy of a war to keep him compliant and afraid. "The dog," Ethan said suddenly, remembering the spark that had set this all in motion. "He bought the German Shepherd to guard the entrance, didn't he? And the big doghouse to hide the trapdoor." Martinez's eyes met his. "That's what we think." Joshua was getting older, more curious. The dog was another layer of security. As they spoke, the forensic team began their work, moving between Harold's house and the dark mouth of the bunker that had been Joshua's entire world. Yellow crime scene. Tape stretched across Harold's yard, fluttering in the cold wind. Officers moved methodically, sealing the property while neighbors bundled in coats and curiosity gathered at the edges. A paramedic knelt beside Claire. "We think it's best to take Joshua to the hospital for a full workup. Years underground, limited sunlight, limited exercise. We need to see how it's affected him." Claire's voice trembled. "Can we go with him, please? We just found him." They agreed. Minutes later, Ethan and Claire rode in the ambulance, seated across from their son. They didn't reach for him, didn't crowd him. He knew them only in biology, not in memory. At Maple Hollow Memorial Hospital, doctors whisked Joshua away for a full examination. Ethan and Claire sat in the waiting area, every minute dragging. Detective Martinez joined them, her expression sober. "Harold's not saying much," she began, "but from what Joshua's told us, he took your son the day he disappeared. That old war bunker was already on his property. The dog kennel was built right over the trapdoor. Why? We're not sure. Possibly his own history. Ethan's voice was quiet. His wife and son were killed in a home invasion 10 years ago. He was never the same. That kind of loss, Martinez said, can shatter a person. Doesn't excuse what he did, but it might explain the break. Claire wiped her eyes. 8 years of lies. Our poor boy doesn't even know what the world really is. He can, Martinez said gently. It'll take therapy and time, but kids are resilient. He has a real chance. Dr. Patel, the pediatrician, approached with a clipboard. Physically malnourished, vitamin D deficient, underdeveloped muscles. All expected. But no signs of physical abuse. He was fed regularly. Conditions were sanitary. Claire covered her mouth, tears spilling. Ethan wrapped an arm around her. Can we see him? He asked. Dr. Patel nodded. Yes, but he's still processing. Don't expect recognition or affection right away, just be there. Joshua sat up in the hospital bed, dwarfed by white sheets and the hum of machines. When they stepped inside, he looked up, cautious but no longer afraid. Hi, Claire said softly, stopping a few feet from the bed. Hi, he replied, studying her face. You're really my mom. Claire nodded, unable to speak. And you're my real dad? Joshua asked Ethan. Yes, Ethan said, his voice thick. We've been looking for you every single day since you disappeared. We never gave up. Joshua frowned. Harold told me my mum died, that everyone outside was an enemy. Why would he lie? Ethan glanced at Claire. He lost his own family a long time ago. I think he was hurt and confused, and he made a terrible, terrible choice. Am I going to live with you now? The boy's voice wavered. If that's okay with you, Claire said gently. Your room is still there. We don't have to rush anything. One day at a time. Joshua nodded slowly. I don't remember you, but when I saw your picture, he trailed off. That's okay, Ethan said. We have all the time in the world now. In the days that followed, news of Joshua's rescue spread through Maple Hollow. Reporters called, but Ethan and Claire declined every interview. Their focus was on their son and showing him photo albums, telling him stories of the life stolen from him, and letting him take in the truth at his own pace. Harold was charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, assault, and multiple weapons violations. In the bunker, investigators found journals chronicling his unraveling mind and his obsession with building a second-chance family after losing his own. Watching Joshua now, Ethan felt grief for the years lost, but also an overwhelming gratitude. The road ahead would be long. Therapy, adjustment, trust. But they had what mattered most. After 8 years of searching, of living on hope, they were a family again.